The twin suns of Vaylon's capital burned over the shining towers of glass and stone. The alien city was proud, tall, and full of order. Silk-dressed nobles walked on glowing bridges while armored guards kept the lower streets clear of dust. To them, it was a perfect world, a world that showed their greatness. But at the bottom of this beauty worked a man they all called Filthy. His name was Daniel Cross, a human from Earth. He wore plain clothes, oil stains covered his hands, and his boots were always heavy with dirt. His hair was short, his face marked by old scars, and his voice was deep, rough like gravel. When the alien nobles passed him, they whispered cruel words. "There goes the filthy human again. Does he not know water exists? Look it. Those hands, tools, not worthy of noble blood." Daniel heard them, but he never answered. He only wiped his forehead, bent over the broken machine, and kept working. He had come to the alien empire years ago as part of a trade mission. Most humans had left when the mission ended, but Daniel stayed behind. The aliens did not understand. Human machines, but they needed them. Daniel became a mechanic, fixing engines, welding parts, and repairing harvesters in the governor's city. To the nobles, he was a beast of burden. To the common workers, he was quiet but reliable. To Daniel, himself, it was simply survival. One afternoon, a group of young alien nobles stood at a balcony above the repair yard. Their clothes glowed with gold threads, their skin painted with expensive oils. They laughed while pointing at Daniel, who was bent over a broken transport engine. "Look at him," one sneered. "Hands black as mud. My pet is cleaner." Another laughed. "If filth could walk, it would look like him." The youngest wrinkled her nose. "Does he not feel shame? He works like an animal." Daniel tightened a bolt, tested the spark of the engine, and let the machine roar back to life. Without looking up, he spoke loud enough for them to hear. "Engines don't care about your gold. They only care about hands that know work." The laughter stopped for a moment. The young nobles felt the sting of his words, but instead of answering, they left with offended pride. Later that evening, in the crowded market streets, a commotion broke out. A predator beast, escaped from a noble's private menagerie, charged into the crowd. Its armored scales shone under the suns, and its jaws snapped with bone-crushing force. Aliens screamed, scattering in fear. Guards ran, too frightened to face the monster. But Daniel did not run. He grabbed a metal bar from a stall and planted himself between the beast and a fallen alien child. The predator roared, claws slicing the air. Daniel stepped forward, swinging the bar with all his strength. It struck the beast's eye, and the creature howled. He dodged a claw, rolled beneath its belly, and drove the bar into the gap of its scales. The fight was short, brutal, and loud. Dust rose, stalls broke, and the crowd gasped. When it ended, the beast lay motionless, its body sprawled across broken stones. Daniel stood above it, chest heaving, bar bent in his hands. He picked up the terrified child, dusted them off, and carried them back to their crying parents. Then, without waiting for thanks, he walked away, blood on his shirt and sweat dripping from his face. Whispers spread quickly through the city. The filthy human killed a predator with his bare hands. Some called it luck, others called it madness. But none could deny it. He had done what armored guards had failed to do. That night, high above the city in the governor's palace, the powerful High Governor Vaylon sat on his throne of crystal, stone. His children, the same young nobles who mocked Daniel, stood nearby, still shaken by the story of the beast. Vaylon's sharp eyes looked down at them. "You laugh at the human," he said slowly. "You call him filthy. Yet when death came, who fought? Not you, not your guards. It was him." His children lowered their heads, ashamed but unwilling to admit it. The governor leaned back, fingers tapping his chin. He had ruled for decades, seen rivals rise and fall, and understood strength when he saw it. Daniel was not polished, not graceful, not noble, but he was strong. He was unyielding. He had something his people had begun to lose, the will to fight with nothing but bare hands and raw willpower. Valen whispered to his advisor, a tall alien with silver skin. That human will change my bloodline's future. The advisor tilted his head. My lord, surely you do not mean... The governor's eyes hardened. Yes, he will not remain an outsider. He will be bound to my house. At the same time, in his small room above the mechanic's yard, Daniel cleaned his hands with a rag. He sat on the edge of his bunk, staring at the scar across his palm, remembering Earth, remembering old battles. He did not know what tomorrow would bring. He only knew that in this city he was alone, forever called filthy. But outside, in the grand halls of power, plans were already being made, plans that would drag Daniel into the noble house, into their politics, and into their very bloodline. And when the news came, the young nobles who mocked him would be forced to swallow their pride, for the governor's word was law. The sun had barely risen when a messenger in silver armor arrived at the mechanic yard. His steps were heavy, his face hidden behind a crystal mask. The workers froze in silence, for only the governor's personal guards wore such armor. The guard spoke in a cold voice. Daniel Cross, the High Governor summons you. You are to come at once. Daniel looked up from the engine he was repairing. His shirt was soaked with sweat and grease covered his arms. He blinked, wiping his brow. Summons me? For what? The guard did not answer. He only repeated, at once. The other workers whispered nervously as Daniel put down his tools. Some thought he was being punished for speaking back to nobles. Others feared the governor had finally decided to rid the city of the filthy human. Daniel followed the armored guard through the wide streets, past marble gates, up the golden stairway into the heart of the palace. He felt the stares of nobles burning into his back as he walked. They looked at him with disgust, as though dirt itself was walking into their holy halls. Inside the palace, he was brought before High Governor Valen. The throne room was massive, its ceiling carved with the history of alien conquests. Valen sat on a throne of crystal stone, his robe heavy, with medals and glowing threads. His children stood at his side, proud Lady Sorella, sharp-eyed Lord Valen, and their younger siblings. They all glared at Daniel with open hatred. Daniel bowed stiffly, not in humility, but in respect. You called for me, Governor? Valen's voice was deep and calm, yet carried the weight of command. I have watched you, human. You work with hands of iron. You fight with the will of a soldier. When danger came, you did not run. My children ran. My guards failed. You alone stood. Daniel said nothing. He did not like being praised. It often came with a price. The governor leaned forward. You are called filthy, yet filth stood where silk fled. Tell me, is this not the strength my bloodline needs? The children stirred in shock. Lady Sorella's eyes went wide. Father, you cannot mean... Valen raised a hand to silence her. His gaze fixed on Daniel. You will not remain an outsider. You will marry into my house. My bloodline will take your strength, and through you it will endure. The hall fell into stunned silence. Daniel froze, thinking he had misheard. Marry into your house? He shook his head, his rough voice breaking the silence. Governor, I am no noble. I am a mechanic, a soldier long out of war. I do not belong in palaces. Your children would hate me more than they already do. Lady Sorella's voice cut through like a blade. This is madness. A human cannot be part of our blood. It is shameful. Her brother added, Father, our people will laugh at us. They will call us corrupted. But the governor's eyes hardened. Enough! Nobles who laugh will kneel when they see results. Bloodlines are not preserved by silks and perfumes. They are preserved by strength, by will, by survival. Look at you, pampered and weak. If not for this human, you would be carrion in the marketplace. The children lowered their heads, ashamed but still burning with silent rage. Daniel's jaw tightened. He wanted to walk away. He wanted to say, "I don't need this. I don't want this." But another thought pressed into his mind. If he refused, the governor might crush him, or worse, cast every human worker out of the city in anger. He took a long breath and spoke carefully. "If I agree, it will not be for wealth or comfort. I don't care for noble titles. I care for my people. Humans here are mocked, treated like dirt. If I marry into your house, I want your word they will be protected." The governor's lips curled into the faintest smile. "You speak like a warrior bargaining terms. Very well. By my name as High Governor, I give you this. No human under my rule will be harmed or dishonored. They will live as free people." The words echoed in the hall. To Daniel, it was more valuable than gold. Finally, he nodded. "Then I accept." The governor struck his staff on the floor. "It is decided. Daniel Cross, from this day you are bound to my house. You will wed my daughter, Lady Cirella." Gasps filled the hall. Lady Cirella stepped forward in fury. "No, father, this cannot be. You would give me, your heir, to a filthy outsider? To a human?" Valan's gaze was sharp as a blade. "Yes, because he has what you lack, and you will obey." Cirella's hands trembled with rage, her face pale with shock. She wanted to scream, to run, to deny, but she could not disobey her father, not when his word was law. She turned her eyes on Daniel, filled with venom. "You will regret this, human. You have stolen what is mine." Daniel looked at her calmly, his voice steady. "I don't want what is yours. I only want to keep my people safe." That answer cut her deeper than anger. When Daniel left the throne room, the palace was buzzing with whispers. Nobles called it disgrace. Servants giggled in shock. The common guards looked at him with wide eyes. The human who was once mocked, as filthy, was now bound to the highest house in the province. Back in his small room, Daniel sat heavily on his bed. He rubbed his scarred hands together and muttered to himself, "Marry a noble. Marry into their bloodline. What have I walked into?" He did not know, but deep inside, he sensed that life would never again be simple. Word count, 955. Eldest daughter Lady Cirella was to marry the filthy human. The news spread through banquet halls, training yards, and silk-filled chambers. Some laughed in secret, others gossiped loudly. A few even pitied Cirella, saying no daughter of noble blood deserved such humiliation. Lady Cirella herself burned with rage. She sat in her chamber, her hands clutching the edge of her jeweled table. Her reflection in the mirror looked back at her, tall, elegant, perfect in every way. Her long hair shimmered with the golden dye of her family's crest. Her robes flowed with silver embroidery. She was proud, graceful, the image of nobility, and yet her father would tie her to him, to the human who walked with dirty boots, to the man who fixed machines like a servant, to the one they all called filthy. Her fists trembled when her younger sister tried to comfort her. Cirella's voice cut like a knife. "Do not speak of it. I would rather die than share my blood with that creature." Her sister bowed her head and left in silence. Meanwhile, Daniel returned to his work in the mechanic yard. He carried himself as he always did, silent, focused, hands black with grease. But the workers around him no longer treated him the same. Some bowed with respect. Others avoided his eyes, afraid to anger someone now tied to the governor's family. Daniel ignored it all. He had not asked for this marriage. He had not sought power. He only wanted the promise the governor gave that humans would be protected. But deep inside, he could feel the weight pressing heavier with each passing hour. That evening, the governor held a grand banquet. The hall was filled with nobles wearing bright silks, jewelry sparkling under crystal lights. Music played, dancers moved, and servants poured wine into cups carved from stone. At the center sat High Governor Valen, calm as ever, with his children at his side. Daniel was brought in, wearing a simple robe the servants had forced upon him. Though cleaned and combed, he still looked nothing like the polished nobles. His broad shoulders, scarred face, and rough manner made him stand out like iron in a field of glass. The room buzzed with whispers as he walked in. Look at him, a beast dressed in silk. How could the governor choose him? This will shame us all. Daniel ignored them. He walked with steady steps and stood beside Lady Sorella. She did not look at him. Her eyes burned holes into the floor, her jaw tight with fury. The governor raised his hand. Tonight, I announce the binding of two bloodlines, mine and that of the human who proved himself when all others failed. Daniel Cross will marry my daughter, Lady Sorella. Gasps filled the hall. Some nobles clapped politely. Others whispered curses. Sorella finally lifted her head, her voice sharp and cold. Father, if you force this, you condemn me to shame. You make me less than noble. The governor's eyes were hard. Obedience to strength is never shame. You will see. Daniel stood silent, neither proud nor ashamed. To him, the hall was full of noise that did not matter. But then the banquet was shattered by screams. A group of assassins burst into the hall, blades flashing. Their armor bore the colors of a rival house. Panic spread. Nobles fled, knocking over tables and spilling wine across the marble floor. Guards rushed forward but were struck down quickly. One assassin leaped toward Lady Sorella, blade aimed at her chest. Before she could move, Daniel stepped in front of her. His hands caught the assassin's wrist, twisting it until the blade clattered to the floor. He slammed his fist into the attacker's jaw, sending him sprawling. Two more came at him. Daniel grabbed a chair, swinging it like a weapon. Wood splintered against armor, but he did not stop. He moved with soldier instincts, raw and brutal. A blade cut his arm, but he ignored the pain, striking until the attacker fell. Lady Sorella could only watch, frozen. The human she hated fought like a storm. He did not wear armor, did not carry noble weapons, yet he stood between her and death without hesitation. Another assassin aimed a crossbow at her. Daniel lunged, pushing her to the ground as the bolt flew over her head. He rolled, snatched a fallen sword, and drove it into the attacker's chest. The hall echoed with gasps as Daniel stood bloodied but unbroken, enemies lying at his feet. The surviving assassins fled, dragging their wounded away. The music had stopped. The nobles stared in silence. Lady Sorella's chest heaved as she sat on the floor, staring at the man who had just saved her life. His arm bled, his robe torn, but his eyes were steady. He did not look at her with triumph, nor with pride. Only with calm duty. He extended a hand to her. On your feet, my lady. Her breath caught. For the first time, she did not see dirt or filth in him. She saw scars, strength and unshakable will. She hesitated, then placed her hand in his. His grip was strong, lifting her easily. For a moment, their eyes met. She wanted to hate him, to spit at him, to call him unworthy. But her voice failed. Instead, she whispered under her breath, too soft for others to hear. He fights like no one I've ever seen, and he fought for me. When the banquet ended, the governor stood and addressed the shaken crowd. Remember this night. Remember who bled for my family while you all ran. This human is not filth. He is the reason my bloodline still breathes. The nobles lowered their heads, unable to answer. Lady Sorella walked back to her chambers, silent and thoughtful. For the first time in her life, her certainty had cracked. She still hated the thought of marrying him. She still burned with anger. But another feeling had entered her heart, something she could not yet name. The palace did not sleep after the night of the attack. The air was filled with fear and whispers. Some nobles still mocked Daniel, calling him filthy behind closed doors. But many could not forget how he fought. He had faced death with his bare hands while they hid behind tables. Lady Sorella sat in her chamber, staring at the moonlight falling through the glass window. Her mind replayed every moment of the attack. The assassins, the blade aimed at her, and Daniel stepping in front. Of her without hesitation, her pride told her to hate him, but her heart remembered his hand lifting her from the ground, his steady eyes looking at her without scorn or arrogance. She hated the confusion he had planted inside her. When her maid asked if she wished to rest, Sorella only whispered, "Leave me." She sat alone through the night. Daniel, meanwhile, returned to his small quarters. A physician offered to treat his wound, but he refused, wrapping his own arm in cloth. He had lived through worse. He looked around the room, bare walls, a rough bed, a broken chair. Nothing had changed, even though he now carried the governor's command to marry into the highest bloodline. To Daniel, the palace, the banquet, the silks, all of it felt unreal. He muttered to himself, "I didn't ask for any of this. I just wanted to keep my people safe." Still, deep inside, he knew there was no turning back. The following day, the court gathered to discuss the attack. Nobles shouted over one another. Some demanded revenge against the rival house. Others claimed the union with Daniel was to blame, calling it an insult that invited enemies. Governor Valen silenced them with a single strike of his staff. His voice echoed, "You forget yourselves. My bloodline still lives because of the man you mock. Without him, you would be holding funeral rites today. Is that the strength you prefer, silk and weakness, or hands that know how to fight?" The hall went quiet. None dared answer. Daniel stood at the side, listening without a word. He did not crave their praise, nor did he care for their politics. But he noticed the way common servants in the hall looked at him. Their eyes held respect, almost hope. Later, in the palace gardens, Lady Sorella found Daniel alone, sharpening a small tool he carried. The silence between them was heavy. Finally, she spoke, her voice sharp. "Do not think saving me makes you noble. You are still what you are. A mechanic. A human." Daniel looked up at her, his face calm. "I never asked to be noble. I never asked to marry you either." Her words caught in her throat. She had expected him to boast, to demand respect. Instead, he sounded almost tired. He stood and wiped his hands. "Your father gave me a choice. If I refused, humans here would suffer. So I agreed. Not for you, not for me, for them." Sorella blinked. She had never thought of him as someone who carried responsibility beyond himself. She wanted to argue, but his steady eyes made her hesitate. "You speak as if duty binds you," she said quietly. Daniel shrugged. "Maybe it does. Duty is the only thing that keeps people alive when the world doesn't care." He walked away, leaving her with questions that cut deeper than insults ever had. As days passed, rumors spread. Some nobles said Daniel's presence was an insult. Others whispered that perhaps the governor was wise, that bringing human strength into the family would secure their future. But while nobles argued, Daniel spent his time elsewhere. He often left the palace to visit the lower districts where common workers lived. There he repaired broken tools, taught alien children how to make simple machines, and helped families with heavy labor. The commoners began to admire him. The idea Human works like us, they said. He does not command from a throne. He helps with his own hands. Lady Sorella, curious, once followed him in secret. She saw him kneel beside a group of alien children, showing them how to shape wood into strong handles. He laughed when their first attempts broke, then encouraged them to try again. His laughter was warm, nothing like the cold, scarred soldier she had seen in battle. For the first time, she felt her anger weaken. She whispered to herself, "How can someone so rough carry such kindness?" That night, Governor Valan summoned his daughter. His voice was stern. "You still resist, I can see it. But listen well. This marriage is not about your pride. It is about the survival of our people. Nobles grow weaker with each generation. They bathe in silk while forgetting the meaning of strength. I will not see our house fall because of vanity." Sorella clenched her fists. "But father, he is not of us. He is different." The governor's eyes narrowed. "Different is what we need. You may hate him now. You may hate me. But remember this. A foundation is not always beautiful stone. Sometimes it is rough, scarred wood. Yet without it, the tower falls." His words struck her harder than she expected. Alone again in her chamber, Sorella stared into the mirror. She thought of Daniel's scarred hands teaching children, his voice calm as he spoke of duty, and the way he had shielded her at the banquet. Her pride whispered, "He is filth." But another voice, quieter, whispered, "Or perhaps he is the foundation." The city had not fully recovered from the assassination attempt when word arrived. A rival alien empire was invading. Scouts reported massive war machines approaching from the northern plains, cutting swaths through the countryside. Smoke rose from villages burned by advanced squads, and fear gripped the nobles. Governor Valan's palace filled with urgency. He called a council of his generals, but the nobles argued endlessly, clashing over strategies. They were strong in titles, but weak in action, their minds suited for ceremonies, not battle. Daniel listened quietly from the back of the hall. When one commander complained that humans could not be trusted with the army, Daniel stepped forward. "If you want the city to survive, you follow my plan. If not, you'll all die while arguing." The nobles laughed at first. A human ordering them? Absurd. But Valan's eyes met theirs, icy and commanding. "You will follow him, or your house dies with your arrogance." The laughter died, replaced with murmurs of disbelief. Daniel moved quickly. He gathered a force from the most unexpected sources: humans who had settled in the city, common alien workers, and discarded soldiers who had been overlooked by the nobles. The nobles called it a filthy army, weak and untrained. But Daniel saw potential. He trained them not in the fancy drills of ceremonial armies, but in human tactics, ambushes, traps, and guerrilla maneuvers. He taught them to use their environment, to fight with cleverness as well as strength. The soldiers began to respect him. They trusted him because he fought alongside them, shoulder to shoulder, never asking them to risk their lives while he stayed safe. Meanwhile, Lady Sorella watched from the palace walls. Her pride still bristled at the thought of marrying a human, yet she could not deny what she saw. Daniel moved through the ranks with calm authority. He corrected mistakes without anger, praised courage without favoring rank, and inspired even the most frightened soldiers. She whispered to herself, "He is unlike anyone I have ever seen." The first battle came at dawn. The enemy's war machines thundered across the plains, metal plates gleaming under the sun. Nobles and soldiers quaked in fear, but Daniel calmly organized his troops. He placed archers in high positions, sent small squads to hide in the trees for ambushes, and stationed humans with knowledge of machines to sabotage enemy engines. When the battle began, chaos erupted. The enemy charged with brute force, expecting to crush a weak noble army. But Daniel's traps and ambushes turned their advance into confusion. Trees fell, pits opened, and hidden squads struck from the shadows. Daniel himself fought in the thick of it. He ducked under swinging claws of a monstrous war beast, rolled beneath its legs, and struck with a reinforced club. He saved a group of young alien soldiers from being crushed, throwing one out of the path of a rolling war machine. Everywhere the nobles had expected death and failure, they saw humans and commoners fighting with skill and courage. Slowly, the tide began to turn. At the city gates, the enemy pressed hard, their machines smashing walls. Daniel organized a counterattack with precision. He directed the workers to pour molten metal from the walls, while the human soldiers disabled the mechanical beasts with coordinated strikes. Alien troops under his command held the gates firm, inspired by his example. Lady Sorella watched, astonished. She had never realized that someone considered filthy could command armies, plan attacks, and protect people. Her anger against him weakened. She felt a strange mix of fear and admiration. The battle raged for hours. Nobles who had mocked Daniel were forced to fight under his orders. At first they complained, but Daniel's calm and courage slowly earned grudging respect. By the end of the day, the enemy's forces began to retreat, unable to overcome a combination of human tactics, bravery, and ingenuity. Daniel stood on a ridge above the battlefield, bloodied, sweat dripping down his face, armor scratched and torn. Around him, soldiers cheered. Humans and aliens alike shouted his name. Even some nobles, red-faced and humbled, nodded in silent acknowledgement. That evening, Governor Velon summoned his family. Lady Sorella approached Daniel cautiously. She had seen a side of him no one in the palace had witnessed. The strength, the wisdom, the unyielding will. You saved the city," she said softly. "All of it. You stood between us and death." Daniel looked at her, brushing dust from his sleeve. "I did what had to be done. It was not about me. It was about keeping everyone alive." Her eyes searched his, trying to understand. She wanted to hate him, but how could she hate someone who risked everything without thinking of himself? The governor spoke then, voice echoing in the hall. "See what I chose for my bloodline. This human, called filthy, has proven his worth. Not in silk or gold, but in strength, courage, and honor. Do you see now why I chose him?" The children bowed their heads. Some grudgingly, some with new understanding. Sorella remained quiet, but her mind was shifting. In the following days, the city celebrated. The nobles no longer mocked Daniel openly. Songs were sung of the human who saved the city. Children played with toy machines, inspired by the man who taught even the lowliest how to use their hands to survive. Daniel, however, remained humble. He fixed broken engines, helped rebuild homes, and continued training soldiers. Titles and silk did not interest him. Only duty and survival mattered. Lady Sorella watched him work, a mixture of admiration and conflict brewing in her heart. She could not deny that the human who once was filthy had become the very foundation of the city's defense. And deep down, she knew that the marriage she had once hated might now hold a new meaning. Word count: 953. The war had ended. The city, battered but alive, began to rebuild. Smoke cleared from the streets, walls were repaired, and the people, humans and aliens alike, moved with cautious hope. Daniel Cross, once called filthy by the nobles, had become a symbol. He was no longer merely a human mechanic. He was the soldier who had saved the governor's family, the strategist who had turned defeat into victory, and the guardian who had risked everything for the city's survival. Yet Daniel remained unchanged in character. He still wore simple clothes, still carried grease on his hands, and still preferred work to titles. The only difference was the way people now looked at him, with respect, awe, and even a hint of fear. Lady Sorella, once filled, with rage and contempt, stood on the palace balcony watching Daniel direct workers repairing the broken gates. She could not deny the truth any longer. The man she had mocked and despised was extraordinary. She remembered every moment of the battle, the way he leapt in front of danger, the calm in his eyes as chaos surrounded him, the way he cared for every soldier under his command. Her pride whispered to her, "He is filthy." But another voice, stronger now, said, "He is the foundation." One morning, Governor Velan summoned his children to the great hall. The nobles, curious and uneasy, gathered, wondering what decree their father would issue next. "Daniel Cross has proven himself," Velan began, voice echoing through the high-ceilinged chamber. "He is no longer an outsider. He is part of this family, part of this city, part of our future," the nobles murmured. Some were still reluctant, some humbled, and some genuinely impressed. The governor's eyes fixed on Cirella. "You will no longer call him filthy. You will no longer doubt him. From this day he is my son, my blood, and my legacy. You will treat him as such." Cirella's heart raced. Pride, shock, and a strange sense of admiration swirled inside her. She wanted to argue, to resist, but she knew the governor spoke the truth. That afternoon, she found Daniel in the training yard, overseeing young soldiers. His stance was relaxed but commanding, hands moving swiftly to correct mistakes. Cirella approached cautiously. "Daniel," she said softly. He turned, wiping sweat from his brow, a faint smile touching his lips. "You are needed," he replied, simply. She shook her head. "Not for work. I came to speak with you." Daniel raised an eyebrow, silently asking her to continue. I cannot deny what you have done," she admitted, voice trembling. "You saved the city. You saved lives. You fought for people who mocked you, for a family who doubted you. And she hesitated, searching for the words. "I have been wrong to think of you as filthy." Daniel's expression softened. "I did not fight for your approval, Lady Cirella. I did it because it was right. That is all I need." Her eyes met his. For the first time, she saw not a soldier or a mechanic, not a filthy outsider, but a man whose courage and heart were unshakable. In the weeks that followed, life began to normalize. Daniel was no longer confined to the mechanic yard. He walked the palace halls freely, spoke with nobles, advised the governor, and helped train soldiers. The common people loved him. The nobles respected him. And even Lady Cirella began to see him in a new light, sometimes laughing quietly at his blunt remarks, sometimes watching him work with quiet admiration. One afternoon, as Daniel repaired a broken carriage for the governor's family, Cirella approached him again. "You should rest," she said. Daniel looked up. "I cannot. There is still much to do. The city must recover fully." She frowned. "Even after all you have done? Even after the victory?" He shook his head. "Victory is only a moment. Survival is constant. I cannot stop helping now." She smiled faintly, seeing his determination and heart. She realized that strength was more than appearances. It was what a person did when the world was against them. Finally, the day came for their official union. The palace was filled with people of all classes. Nobles, citizens, humans, and aliens alike gathered to witness the ceremony. Governor Velan stood tall, proud. "Today we recognize Daniel Cross not as an outsider, but as a member of this house. He is my son, my protector, and my blood. Let this marriage symbolize not shame, but unity, strength, and honor." Cirella stood beside him. She had chosen her words carefully. "I was wrong to doubt you, Daniel. You are no longer just part of my father's house. You are part of my life, part of this city, and part of everything we protect." Daniel inclined his head. "I do not claim to be noble, but I will stand for you, for this family, and for all who depend on us. That is all I promise." The words were simple, yet their meaning carried the weight of honor, strength, and commitment. As the ceremony concluded, the city erupted in cheers. Children waved, soldiers saluted, and nobles who once mocked him now bowed. Daniel stood, hands calloused and scarred, eyes steady and heart calm. Lady Sorella took his hand, not in fear, not in duty, but in trust. Together, they walked through the palace halls, past citizens who now cheered for the human who had become the foundation of their city. The governor watched them, smiling. His bloodline was secure, not just through titles or silks, but through courage, honor, and the man who had once been called filthy. In the days that followed, Daniel continued his work. He repaired machines, trained soldiers, and protected the city. But now, he also moved freely in the palace, consulted by the governor, and respected by all. He had not changed, but the world had. Lady Sorella watched him, her heart quiet with understanding. She whispered to herself, "They called him filthy, but to me he is the foundation of everything." And for the first time in her life, she felt certain. The city, the family, and the future were stronger because of him.